Hi BookTube! So 2016 is over and I'm here to talk about the best books that I read at that time. These are my top 12 books of 2016 and let's get into them. Number 1, Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is a book where it's like a university level philosophy class meets a Jerry Springer episode, where the fights could be over whether the father or the brother should end up with the girl, or whether God exists or not. I chose this book as one of my favorites because it literally gave me a headache at times trying to work my way around the philosophy that was being presented. And it literally changed the way I think. It made me think about things differently, made me reassess things, and it was really overall a great book. Number 2 is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and this book is about a group of humans and aliens that are on a spacecraft together, and they are on a long haul, so they're traveling together for a long period of time. It was the perfect book for the perfect time because of the quiet optimism. The image of humanity that it presented was very reassuring and comforting. It was the perfect book for the time that I was reading it at, which was during the 2016 election, which I'm sure disappointed a lot of us. Number 3, Injustice: Gods Among Us. This is a DC comic series based off a video game, actually, and it's about what happens if Superman just took over the world. And it pits Superman's team against Batman's team and features just about everybody in the DC universe. The scope is awesome in how big it gets. The action that happens is awesome, but the reason why it's definitely on this list is because it deals with such philosophical, political, and societal issues in a really interesting way that you normally wouldn't think about. Number 4, Minister Without Portfolio by Michael Winter. This is on here primarily for the writing style, which I found really nice and easy to get into. The story of acceptance, about finding peace and quiet, about the search for happiness, is really, really wonderful. It's a story of a man whose girlfriend breaks up with him because he's not adventurous enough, so he decides to go out and find adventure. And it's where he finds it is somewhere not expected. The description of the landscape is beautiful as well. It made me want to move to Newfoundland. Number 5 is The Hero's Walk by Anita Rao Badami. And this is another Canada Read selection, and it is a book about a family in India, a traditional Indian family, who take in their orphaned granddaughter who's born and raised in Canada in a totally different culture. And this is primarily on this list because of the characters. The good characters are good, but the bad characters are bad, and they're bad without excuses. Like, that's just who they are, and I really appreciate that in a villain. So I really, really liked that book for that reason. Number 6 is Frankenstein Murders by Catherine Bradshaw, and this was in sequel to the Frankenstein book by Mary Shelley, and it's about a detective who's hired to investigate the murders done by Frankenstein's monsters and whether the monster is real or not. It actually reaffirmed a thesis I had in university regarding the mental health of Frankenstein in the book, and it was really refreshing to, have someone kind of reaffirm your thoughts on a book that aren't, necessarily mainstream. Book number 7 is Every Heart a Doorway by Sinead McGuire, and this book is about children who are kidnapped into fantasy worlds that are where they actually belong, but then get ejected from those fantasy worlds for some reason into the real world, where then they have to learn to adapt, and they do this by going to school. The beautiful, quiet atmosphere of this book is really what made me love it, but also this is on this list because of the main character Nancy, who is asexual, and is refreshing to read because we need more exposure to this, and it's especially good in YA. and I'm sick of reading about forced relationships. Number 8 is Your Fathers, Where Are They? And the Prophets, Do They Live Forever? By Dave Eggers, which is about a young adult man who decides that he's sick of people not talking to him, not giving him the answers that he needs, so he kidnaps them, chains them to a radiator, and says, listen, you have to answer some of my questions. And it sounds like a great idea, in theory, but I included this book because it talks a lot about millennial dread. The past generations have had, defining things happening in their lives, and here we are, 2016, and how do we define ourselves as a generation? It's about the search for purpose, being upset at the world we've been handed by the boomers, and then being blamed for it by them. And it's really interesting, completely told in dialogue. Really good book. Number 9 is The Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon, and this is included on here not just for the laugh out loud humorous moments, but for the postmodern weirdness. It is a story about a woman who has to look after her ex-boyfriend's estate after he passes away, and gets involved in this mystery surrounding a post office service and what it means to communicate. Number 10 is Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner, and this is a novel that is more interesting for its format than maybe for its plot. It's about a world that is overpopulated, and we follow two people as they navigate the corporate world and the government world and the intermingling of the two, and especially how it regards in reproduction rights. The formatting of this book is why it's on this list. Each section of the book is done in a different way. For example, there are side stories about minor characters or characters that we only see for that chapter. There's background information, which is just information from a text or a speech or a commercial, and then there's chapters where it's like you're walking down the street and there's billboards and snippets of conversations and bulletin boards, and you read like about rooms for rent and such like this, and all this kind of interesting stuff done. The formatting helps really build the world and make it immersive. Number 11 is Stargate Atlantis Halcyon by James Swallow. This is a guilty pleasure one on here. My favorite TV show is Stargate Atlantis, and I found it as a book. I thought I'll give it a shot, and it really smashed my prejudice of the TV to book adaptations, which I thought were all bad. This read like an episode of the TV show. I was really surprised. So if you don't know anything about Stargates, which is astounding to me, it's like a circle, and it creates a portal to different planets and universes that you can travel through, and the Stargate Atlantis team travel through it, and they come to this kind of steampunk world, which is still ruled by a oligarchy almost, by nobility, and they have guns and stuff, but the way they approach their enemy is as if the enemy was a weapon instead of an actual enemy. It's really quite fascinating the way he's able to turn everything on its head. Last book on this list, number 12, is The Latency Paradox of Barrett Trufflehard by Ultraquan. And this is, I don't know how to describe this book. It's a world called The Economy that's basically all about consumerism, and we follow Barrett Trufflehard, who's kind of fighting off the enemies of the economy, which are called Jadites. It is really quite fascinating, and it's on this list because it is a rare book where the use of the language is used to build the world and make it immersive, not just in the descriptions of the world, but in the actual use of the words that he chooses to write in. And that's really rare to see that level of dedication in writing and in world building, and I highly recommend it for that alone. So I've talked long enough. Those are my top 12 books of 2016. Let me know what your favorite book of this year was, and thank you for watching.